Promove edição especial virtual. Realização e promoção. Patrocínio. Apoio. Apoio institucional. Parceria. Parceiros de mídia. Assessoria de imprensa. A logística e a transformação digital integrando negócios.
Hello, welcome to yet another day of technical program of our special edition 15 Years of Expolog. A virtual greeting to our audience in Ceará, Brazil, and the rest of the world watching the International Logistics Seminar. And now in 2020, the main theme is logistics and digital transformation integrating business. And continuing with our program, now we go on to panel 5, International Business. And so let's see who our speakers are for this panel. My dear friends from the state of Ceará, a special greeting to our friends from the Chamber of Commerce, Brazil, Portugal, and Ceará, bringing together the Portuguese and Brazilian communities. Portugal has in Ceará many friends working for the internationalization of the Portuguese economy, but also the same thing for the Brazilian economy. And so in this opportunity, especially focused in logistics, I would like to talk to you about 3 important points. The first one, I want to highlight the work of the chambers of commerce between Brazil and Portugal and Brazil. We have Armando Abreu from the Federation of Chambers of Commerce, but also our friend Nuno Rabelo Souza. The whole ensemble of these chambers of commerce do relentless work for the internationalization of the Portuguese economy in Brazil. They do wonderful work to approximate Brazilians to Portugal, to work with investment agencies in Portugal, also the whole diplomatic body and consul offices. It's our great friends that deserve our embrace. Let's continue working together so that we can make Portugal and Brazil more prosperous economies and creating more opportunities for Portuguese and Brazilians. The second aspect that I wanted to also highlight is logistics. Logistics is a central sector and very important in this moment where we want to increase the flows of trade between Portugal and Brazil. The state of Ceará is the closest state to Portugal. You can look at Portugal and Portugal transportation as a gateway to the European market, the railroads that link the Atlantic to the Iberic Peninsula in Madrid, and also by ocean, the ports in the south and the Mediterranean, but also in the north of Europe. Portugal, and especially Porto de Sinos, very deep waters, the gateway to a logistics and industrial area where you can add value, develop activities that add value, especially in very important industries such as agriculture and agribusiness, that should export more to Europe, just like Portugal wants to export more to Brazil. So international trade creates opportunities for development and growth for both Europeans and countries in Mercosul who should exchange goods and services in order to create more value and more opportunities for jobs and income. My last point that I want to mention to you is the agreement between Europe and Mercosul. Portugal is part of the EU, and as part of the European Union, we are a member state that can be reached by a port. It's a political agreement that took 20 years of negotiations. It's a political agreement that's extremely important, and Portugal, as the presidency of the EU, is going to really move all of this forward. This agreement will allow to reduce tariffs in more than 90% for the trade between the EU and Mercosul. There are periods of adjustment, of course, periods of adjustments between the 10 years and 15 years, but will allow to reduce to zero tariffs, allowing Brazilians to export what you're most competitive in, like agribusiness, but will also allow Europe to export competitive products to Mercosul that you know very well: Portuguese wine, our olive oil, but also automobiles that will allow to export goods, but also to always defend the national industries of each country. We know that with our Brazilian friends are also defending this agreement. And so that's why I would like to say this: we need you. We need Brazilians. We need the trade agencies to promote between the EU and Mercosul. We're doing our part, but we also need everyone on board. Now, this agreement, as I've said, been discussed now for 20 years. It's also a political option. It's not only economic. It's a political option for shared values, for freedom and democracy, civil liberties and political freedoms, but also economic liberties, a business initiative. Europeans and countries of Mercosul, Portuguese and Brazilian, we share a common history. We share a common language, which is Portuguese, but we also share an ideal of freedom and democracy that is confirmed also in trade. Our poet, the most famous poet, Fernando Pessoa, from the 20th century, also wrote about trade and always said that if you want peace, trade. And trade is a sharing of interests, and you have mutual interests. You don't want war. You want peace. So the world that we live in today, those that attack international trade are also attacking our way of living, our way of life, the way that we want to live. And the fundamental values are in this way of living. And that's why defending this agreement between Mercosul and the EU is not only defending the interests of business, but also defending the countries involved, the regions involved, and the world that we want to live in. And that's why we count on you for this battle. Portugal will always be in the front lines defending this agreement that was so important and that will continue to be a decisive element for political approximation between the EU and Mercosul. I wish you all the best, and never forget, international trade has a backbone, and this backbone is logistics. And efficiency in logistics is the necessary part. It's a condition in order for us to have best international trade. So working on logistics, thinking about logistics, is to also think in how to have more efficient trade. So we're on the right track, and let's continue I greet you and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Hello, we are at Expolog, panel number 5, International Business. We have the opportunity to have lots of invitees in the field of foreign trade, whether in Portugal, whether in Brazil, to debate this theme. Before this debate, we've had the opportunity to watch the introducing lecture of the Secretary of State Eurico Brilhante, Secretary of Internationalization in Portugal, that talked indeed about this context. And to debate over this international business theme, we have Armando Abreu, President of the Federation of Chamber of Commerce from Portugal and Brazil. Hello, Armando. So, good morning, Rômulo. Morning, everyone. Pleasure to have you with us, Armando. That is the president, recently assumed the presidency of the Portuguese Chambers of Commerce in Brazil. Can you talk about it? Well, Karina Frota, Vice President of the Sectorial Foreign Trade Chamber and Manager of the International Business Center at FIEC. FIEC. Hello, Karina. Welcome. Hello, Rômulo. Thank you. It's a privilege to participate in this moment with you. The pleasure is ours. In the sequence, talking from Portugal, we have maybe in Lisbon, Mr. Luís Cacho, President of the Port Administration at Sines and Algarve. Hello, my friend Luís Cacho. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Well, it's my pleasure to thank you for this kind invitation and to participate on this panel and the quality of the president of the Portuguese Port Association. I'm here at Sines, working normally, and now with this pandemic issue having imposed us some restrictions, and we're trying to have some lockdowns here, and these lockdowns online lockdowns, they allows us to have this accessibility. And so I thank you, and I will wait for the debate, and a good journey to everyone. Luís Cacho, that is with us, I'm sure, absolutely from the first Expologs edition, and for the first time, not in person, but with us digitally. And also with us from São Paulo, Nuno Rebelo de Souza, President of the Chamber of Commerce, the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, Portuguese Chamber of Commerce in Brazil. Hello, Nuno. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Hello, Rômulo. It's the third year in a row in Expolog, so I'd like to thank you again for your kind invitation. I need Romero, Armando, all the staff. So it's a pleasure to be with us from São Paulo, from the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce. The pleasure is ours. I think we are friends here from various editions of Expolog. This one of the main events discussing logistics in Brazil. And also with us, regular Coronel Romero, Vandossi Romero, the president of the Chamber, Brazil, Portugal, in Ceará. It's a joyful moment for us, Coronel. Oh, the pleasure is mine, Rômulo, and everyone, representing the Chamber of Commerce, Brazil, Portugal, in this panel, our chamber that always is present in these events, promoting foreign trade. And I reiterate my joy to be here, the joy of my chamber to be participating here. So the pleasure is ours. We have a group that dominates a lot the Portugal and Brazil relationships and can contextualizing with international relations. So with great knowledge to contribute to this panel, we have a little bit more than an hour in this panel, and we divided this discussion in some pieces. I would like to anticipate for those who watch us to understand how we navigate in this debate. First of all, since we have lots of backgrounds and entities with very specific roles, in the first moment it will be very important for those who watch us. What is the role of which one of the participants? And Afterwards, we'll talk specifically about the commercial and investment relationship between Brazil and Portugal that have an important dimension, especially regarding investment. And afterwards, and finally, we'll talk about the role of the Portuguese language facilitating the business between Brazil and Portugal. We cannot not to talk about the agreement that within the European Union, and it's with Brazil, and it's going to a happy end. And the present and the future of logistics, both countries, they have in the maritime transportation their first commercial articulation, and in the aerial field, the investments. And we'll talk about this Atlantic space as an important space for the Portuguese language countries, whether in Europe, whether South America, whether in Africa. So this is the general context that we'll be talking in the next hour. So first of all, the institutional roles of each participant. I would ask that we could inform those who watch us what is the role of each entity and the role of to reinforce the international relationships, but specifically between Brazil and Portugal. And I begin with the President Armando Abreu, President of the Commerce Chambers, Armando Abreu. So, first of all, as you said, I've assumed the President of the Commerce Chamber Federation. So Brazil, due to its continental dimension and its situation of federative states, Brazil has 18 commerce chambers, and more or less 10 years ago, we've had our friend, an enthusiastic friend of this chamber, commerce chamber situation, Antonio Carreiras, with the help of some of you here, had the idea to create the Chambers Federation. So it's an associative institution that puts together all the commerce Brazil-Portugal chambers in Brazil. Rômulo had been a president of this federation. Nono had been the last, so the last presidents were me and Nono, and it's been debated for us in the General Assembly, and in the last meeting we had through a video conference. We, as a federation, we must have as a role to incentivize the creation of more commerce chambers, to strengthen the current ones, and to allow a synchronization of the chamber's activity. Obviously, each chamber has its autonomy. They are private associations. They are completely autonomous, but the role of the federation is extremely important. First of all, to try to synchronize, to agglomerate, and to dynamize the performance of these chambers. As a federation, we are nowadays trying to incentivize, to present a program of group actions to strengthen this role. I highlight here the issue, the matter about the recognition of the chambers by the Portuguese government, and we as a federation, with the help of the official help of some official secretariats, we must bring the chambers to a broaden knowledge by the society. And so we have all the reports about foreign investments between Brazil and Portugal. It's very important. The matter about publicizing and incentivizing some cultural activities, and also entertainment activities. So the business missions, that is a very common activity for lots of commerce chambers. So Nuno, in the last 4 years, he did a lot in terms of dynamics and business missions. So a summit that we organized 4 years ago in the Portuguese chamber in Ceará, and in a quick initiative of the Federation, Nuno called me and led in the last year. So we all know that the role of the Federation and this strengthening, this synchronization, this group activity, agglomeration of activity in all the chambers is very important for the internationalization of the companies, whether Brazilian or Portuguese. I usually say that the big conglomerates, they do not need us, but the small and medium enterprises, they do need, and we are the perfect help, the perfect leverage for these companies to internationalize their businesses. So, Mr. Abreu, we have 2 chambers here in São Paulo and Ceará, which are the main Portuguese commerce chambers within Brazil. So how can we inform our foreign public? So let's start with the oldest, so the more than 100 years in the state of Pará, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and Minas Gerais. Now we have Salvador. Is the state of Pernambuco, the more than 100 years? Yes, 100 years. So we have Ceará, Rio Grande do Norte, we have Espírito Santo, Rio Grande do Sul, Mato Grosso, Goiás. So I may have forgotten some, but 17 or 18 commerce chambers, Portuguese commerce chambers. Obviously, the oldest are São Paulo, Rio, Salvador, Pará. Ours from Ceará, because I am an honorary citizen of Ceará. I think Romero is living in Ceará for 21 years. I am 20. I think these are our chambers, and our goal is to create more chambers. All these chambers are initiative of some entrepreneurs, Portuguese or Brazilian. In the case of the state of Ceará, we've been a group of people, Rômulo, Romero included, and others, Eduardo Bezerra, Raimundo Viana, that participated actively in our chamber. So we need to incentivize more chambers to rise, and the strengthening of the existing ones. I think it's been possible to contextualize this federation and how the federation articulates within Brazil. I pass the floor to Karina Frota, one of the articulators and vice-president of the chamber. She's here representing 2 entities. So the sector investing chamber, and also from the International Business Center. I would like you, Karina, to explain these 2 entities and their importance for the international businesses. So, Rômulo, if you allow me, I start to give you a great recognition of for this Expolog staff, and also to express my feelings. I am happy because it's an honor to participate with you, with Dr. Armando, Coronel Romero, Luis Castro, our President Nuno, and a concern because I am the only female representative in this panel, so I am representing all the women, and I'll try to do my best to accomplish this mission given me by our president, Ricardo Cavalcante. I'll start talking about the Industry Federation of the State of Ceará, FIEC, FIEC. So the FIEC nowadays develops a fantastic work. We have 1 year of the President Ricardo's term, he raised this flag of the internationalization, so prioritizing internationalization as an area of strategic performance for his management, for his term. And our International Center of Business at FIEC, we are in a new space, in a new building, with a very cutting-edge infrastructure, with technology, cutting-edge technology. We have systems that allows us to perform researches and to obtain information from all over the world. And as main areas of performance inside this internalization, we have actions towards the capacity building. We are the only one issuers of the origin certificate of our state. We have a complete consulting program in import and export subjects. And I thought very interesting in the speech of Dr. Armando when he highlighted the importance, the need of this support towards the small and medium enterprises. We have a big concern to open the market and to bring effective opportunities to this small industry, and that not only because it's small, it doesn't mean that this company must not have opportunities for internationalization. We have a very clear event from the European Union, some countries with this more consistent focus on internationalization towards the small and medium enterprises. And we are very honored to have in our federation, to have under our umbrella our chamber, the Brazil-Portugal Commerce Chamber in Ceará, with the leadership of our president, Coronel Romero, that make us very proud, because it's a serious work, it's a committed work. And I am nowadays representing the Sectorial Chamber for International Commerce and Investment. This chamber works under a bigger umbrella. We have other sectorial chambers linked to the development agency for the agency for Ceará's development, and our role is to facilitate the entrepreneurship challenges, trying to address all the red tape involved with some situations of difficulties, or entrepreneur need to talk to some foreign institution, and sometimes the contact is challenging because indeed of the red tape. And our president Monica Luz, together with all the staff here, performed the last edition of the Ceará Global, an incredible, spectacular event. And briefly, in 2021, we'll have another management with another president, but it's been fabulous to share the responsibility with President Monica and with our Colonel Romero in this management. So it puts our federation in the Business International Center at your disposal, at the industry's disposal, willing to enter this internationalization context, but also to those institutions that need some support towards infrastructural issues. We are highly featured, and we have also the opportunity to share our space for meetings and for business meetings and similars. Well, it's a pleasure to have you, Karina, to have your female presence and your skills. So the last three presidents, they were women, Rosiane and Monica Luz. in the sectorial chamber. So let's cross the Atlantic Ocean and let's arrive at Setúbal to talk with President Luis Carlos, from the Port Association in Portugal. How this association is important for the Brazilians, for the relationship with Brazil. So thank you, Rômulo, to thank Prática Eventos for this kind invitation to participate in this initiative. In fact, our APP is an association of ports in Portugal, as any other association, has activities towards the aspects of the associated activities. And, for example, the role of the promotion and in common projects, for example, a port without a paper that we have here. It's been a project developed together with the associates of the APP. And also, we have an interesting activity to support to the ports, sometimes in the negotiation of government, the regulation aspects. So we've been very active in this interaction, promoting interaction between the associates and the public bodies. Also, negotiations with the unions and all the stakeholders of customer associations, everything linked in the context of all the activities, the portuary activity. And on the other hand, we have another component, and that's what brings me here. So the promotion and internationalization of the Portuguese ports. And in fact, we have our brand. It's called Portuguese Ports. Everywhere we go in the world, we carry our brand. And we're having a focus in Brazil in the internationalization aspects, and most specifically in the Ceará state region. We've been very assertive, trying to get closer and closer to the Ceará state and trying to generate a set of opportunities for both Brazil and Portugal entrepreneurs. And just to complement this first part of my intervention, some years ago, with the port structure in Brazil, we've founded an association called APLOP, so the Portuguese language ports. So before this meeting, I had another meeting. I was in a forum of this association with Brazilian ports as well, and with the president Mariana Chaves, the president of the dock company of Ceará. And we've had a very interesting talk, and we're working together in the perspective to help all the commercial trades amongst the Portuguese language countries, and also this creation of the Atlantic space for the Portuguese language countries. And I'm happy to be here, and I thank you, Rômulo. So, Luis Castro is the president of the Port Association in Portugal. And Nuno, for a while, he was been the president of the Federation, so in this centenary chamber, Portuguese chamber in São Paulo. What's the role of this chamber in Brazil, please, Rômulo? Please, Nuno. So, as you know, I'm linked with this Commerce Chamber of São Paulo, maybe almost 10 years, and I've been participating of this development, of this growth of our São Paulo's Portuguese chamber. I think all the chambers are quite similar, but obviously São Paulo as a center, performing a center role in the state of São Paulo. It's an entrance point of the major part of the Portuguese investors coming to Brazil. So we have this characteristic, we have this kind of priority that takes us to have a relevant dimension with 500 associates. But we also can launch new ideas, and it's a traditional chamber, as you said, but it's it's a chamber that is getting modern, as Ceará and Rio de Janeiro chambers. So in the last 4 years, we'll be now modernizing, and I remember in 1981 when Antonio Carreras or Pedro Souza assumed the chamber in 1980. So took the chamber by the time of this narrow vision of only import-export and transformed the chamber in the business chamber. And why? Because we have the role to support companies that import and export in Brazil, but besides, we are an association that aims to support all the entrepreneurs, whether startup or industrial or SMEs entrepreneurs. I think that's the focus of the chambers, because we have the industries, but we also have the SMEs. And we are an enabler for the entrepreneurs, and we have a strong partnership all over Brazil, not only with the Portuguese government through the consulates, the honorary consuls, honorary ambassadors, and but also through our agency to attract investments. And so these three entities, so the chambers and the governments, work in the common pathway to improve investments between Brazil and Portugal. In the last years, we've been successful in the most part of the Portuguese investments done here, the support of these three entities, but sometimes people come to Brazil without asking our help, and then we cannot perform this opening procedures for the smooth sailing to the Portuguese entrepreneurs. But in São Paulo, we've been growing in this inverted flow of business. I mean, from Brazil to Portugal, so the exports in average, so Brazil is taking advantage of the currency exchange to increase the exports, so from Brazil to Portugal. And we are also preparing the Brazilian entrepreneurs to Portugal. So I think São Paulo has started this trend 5 years ago, but I think the most part of the Portuguese chambers are taking advantage of this inverted flow, so from Brazil to Portugal. So not only the São Paulo's chamber, but our São Paulo's chamber is a kind of embryonic partner for lots of experiences. So with the help of the federations, we try to replicate all these approach to all the other chambers. An example of this is the missions, business missions, so with members of government and members of the AI7. It's an important thing to highlight in this panel, that so the Portugal and the Portuguese entrepreneurs, they have been supported by the Portuguese government in the last 4 or 5 years to develop new businesses and opportunities, so good conditions to flexibilize export from Portugal to Brazil. And also within the missions, businesses missions, so all the missions of the Portuguese authorities to Brazil, so from Portugal to São Paulo or Minas Gerais or Brasilia. So whether the Federation, either Federation or either Commerce Chamber of São Paulo had taken part. So an example we had about internationalization, we've had a mission of the president of the AI7 and the president of the Federation. We've met for 2 days in São Paulo, focusing in some sectorial priorities. In this case, we focused on tourism, infrastructure, logistics, and then agribusiness. That is a theme that maybe Expolog will approach, but in less than a month, the state's secretary from Portugal will resume this visit to dynamize, will continue this visit to dynamize the agribusiness opportunities, either to Brazil and Portugal. So it's an example of a venture activity. So the AI7 performs to find Portuguese and Brazilian entrepreneurs interested in investment and to strengthening the bilateral relations between Portugal and Brazil. Okay, no, thank you. So Colonel Romero, we've heard all the other participants, Mr. Abreu, Mr. Nono Rabelo de Souza, describe the role of the chambers, and I would like to hear from you your perception about the importance of the Portuguese Commerce Chamber in Ceará. So, Rômulo, thank you very much. Okay, so after listening the president of the Portuguese Chamber in São Paulo, so we get a little shy because our São Paulo Chamber is a reference to us. But our chamber in the state of Ceará is developing, a very important role in talking about internationalization of the local economy. We started our activities in June 2001. As Abreu said, it's not 21 years. We've achieved 20 years in 2021, and we'll celebrate for sure. And as all other chambers, we're trying to enhance the socioeconomic relationships between the foreign and the Brazilian entrepreneurs. And it does not exclude other multilateral actions with other countries, having the Portuguese language chambers all over the world as a pillar to make all these business possible. We are based on a very comfortable space in Ceará that gives us a lot of credibility in front of all the entrepreneurs. We are inside the headquarters of the Industry Federation of Ceará. I have here two people that contributed a lot for the consolidation of our chamber, Mr. Armando Abreu, the former president, and Mr. Rômulo Alexandre, that have been, I think, maybe the second president or second or third president. So it's a legacy that I am conducting, a legacy from other fellows that consolidated our chamber in Ceará. We are fully integrated with the other entrepreneurs and commerce institutions in Ceará. We are very, very close to the Industry Federation and also with the Commerce Federation, also with SEBRAE. These three bodies created recently, I think, these three entities, they created a very important thing. So a venture of these three entities, a permanent forum for the chambers, consolidating and strengthening a little bit what Abreu said. We need more commerce chambers, more strong commerce chambers, to have the creation of a strong environment for internationalization, because alone we cannot perform well. We need more partners, more commerce chambers from other countries. We have some Brazil, Germany, and Brazil, Italy chambers in Ceará. I think this permanent forum for these chambers is a place to debate the common issues for the commerce chambers. So I am observing that the Portuguese government is giving a very huge importance for the commerce chambers all over the world. So Portuguese chambers all over the world. I realize that the government intends to use these commerce chambers spread all over the world. If I'm not mistaken, in Brazil we have 18 as an instrument for internationalization policies. So recently we've had brought by Nuno and Armando news from Portugal that will be somehow or linked with the actions of the ICEP, integrated this important export body of the Portuguese government. We are always very attentive to take advantage of the event opportunities happening in our state. We've been participating in the main events about internationalization of our state's economy, and that's it. This way I would like to state that I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Colonel Romero. In this first part, we had the opportunity to see the roles of all these institutions presenting this debate about international businesses. In the second moment, we'll talk specifically about the relationship between Brazil and Portugal. It's important to make clear that these relationships are not only regarding commerce, import and export, but also about investments. In the last 30 years, we acknowledged a very important modification between the relationship of Brazil and Portugal. And I would like you to ask you all to talk about investments and foreign commerce, but I would like to bring you some numbers, some figures, so a quick X-ray about the foreign commerce between Brazil and Portugal. And I commented that it's a commerce of oil commerce. So the main factor of Brazil's import of fuel oil, and 50% of the Brazilian imports are oil, edible oil. So which are the opportunities we have in terms of foreign commerce and foreign investments between Brazil and Portugal? And then I'll ask, so let's pass the floor to Luis Cacho to comment in your vision as a Portuguese port representative, the goods that leave the ports in Brazil and Portugal, and what is your perception about this trade relationship? So obviously, looking at if we look at internationalization, we acknowledge that Brazil we have a big focus from Portugal, talking about foreign investment. And in fact, we have a group of factors and oil. So our strategy has been to look to Brazil, and why to look to Brazil. So nowadays we're living situation. So the ports are facing some interesting challenges, and the port of Sines, the port that make its living through energy, for example, 70% of the port businesses. So when we see the world, all the challenges and the pandemic accelerating the processes of changing and also the climate changes, and at Sines we've had a very significant impact. And this first year, for example, coal ships are zero in this 2020. So the thermoelectric plants are about to close, and so we'll start. So the coal, we're not working with coal anymore in the Sines port. It's a huge impact, about 15 or 20%. We have other changes about the oil, petroleum. So the world is changing quickly. So the oil consumption around the world, all the plants, the refining plants, all the economy linked to oil. So these changes will be established in the next years. And so the fuel and all the refined fuels deriving from oil. So this industry will have to reinvent itself, and also other issues linked to ethanol and hydrogen. So we have a strategic challenge, very interesting one. We're looking to the future, and looking to the future, we have a sector of interest. There is the perspective to get investments from Brazil, linked to important sectors in Brazil. So Brazil is an important player regarding agribusiness and Ceará also. So we have excellent conditions to have Brazilian companies in the European market or north of Africa and all the Mediterranean area. So the port of Sines may be, in fact, a pillar to the agribusiness in Brazil, aiming the European market. So and also all the commerce relations between Europe and South America may foster our strategy. So we have a focus to get investments to give excellent conditions and to create a group of package of incentives to the agribusiness in Brazil, so they can look forward to Sines to be an important port for their industry. So we have lots of markets in the agribusiness, and also the gather of foreign investments. And the Ceará state is a region, it's a place we have lots of Portuguese performing in the agribusiness sector, and your chambers, you can tell me, and you can see a very interesting group of opportunities, and to reorient the efforts to the agribusiness sector. So Ceará State has always been a strategic partner in Brazil to this sector. Nuno, you mentioned before that the Commerce Chamber in São Paulo has 500 associates. So the main focus today, so the current moment is linked more to the foreign trade or to the foreign investment. Well, nowadays we are more linked to the foreign investment, whether foreign investment in Brazil, so startups or technology companies or service providers arriving in Brazil. We have a peculiar case of Portuguese companies already in Brazil, but not in São Paulo, and then when entering the São Paulo state, they'll have the Portuguese Commerce Chamber, and to know better the environment, to know better about the opportunities. I always say that the Portuguese companies have, on the contrary of our friends in Spain, so the Portuguese companies, they come to Brazil and they do not succeed as Santander and other Spanish companies. We have these difficulties for the small and medium enterprise to internationalize in Brazil, having a base of previous big Portuguese groups. But first of all, because we do not have big Portuguese groups in Brazil, we're talking about, we have oil companies, Portuguese companies in Brazil, but other than those, we have, for example, the civil construction companies, we have these companies dedicated to the civil construction, so whether infrastructure or whether housing. So we have these, in the last 3-4 years in Brazil, they're having very interesting businesses in Brazil, and as these companies are successful, they support the Portuguese chamber, and then they participate in the daily routine of the Portuguese chambers, and that's fundamental. The chambers, Portuguese commerce chambers, they need the support of the Portuguese companies representing the country here. We're talking about civil construction companies, or in the transport area or import-export areas. We have wine and oil and edible oil and codfish, all these goods, all these edible goods. But our chamber nowadays, it's a chamber for the investors, whether from Brazil, whether from Portugal, and those investors are looking forward to internationalization. So we have a small, medium enterprise that they may diversify the risk, and so internationalization to Europe is not anymore an option. It's mandatory, and we know that Brazilian entrepreneur, they are used to internationalization to the USA, some successful, some other not, but they understand that to enter in Europe, for example, they may use Portugal, because of our cultural similarities or language, our support from the chambers of commerce, whether in Brazil, whether in Portugal, and also other entities. And also because of the Brazilians that arrived in Portugal in the last 4 or 5 years. So, and they are entering the European market through Portugal. And Portugal is considered one of the best countries in the world in terms of legal, security, tax framework, and to import and export from Portugal to other countries. Due to our customs policies, we have it's easy to perform agreements with all the platforms around the world. So it's an advantage for the Brazilians who are thinking about to create a hub in Portugal, from Portugal to the Middle East or to north of Africa. It's been very successful in the last 5 years. So Karina, in this part of our panel, we're talking about opportunities for investments between Brazil and Portugal. We know that International Business Center acts strategically in the foreign trade in Brazil. How do you find the situation between Brazil and Portugal? And we saw Nuno talking about Portugal as a possible hub for Brazil. And in this foreign trade, your opinions as a specialist, how do you find the relationships between Brazil and Portugal? So let me give you some context, getting back 22 years ago, when we started the flights with a company, flight company called TAP, between Lisbon and Brazil. So in these two last decades, we've had very promising moments. We've had some economic peaks. We've received international missions. We've sent business missions to Portugal. And because all of this involvement, we've had an institutional union, a big institutional union, with a common purpose. And we've had lots of successful cases of local companies that entered the Portuguese market. But with time, we've had other markets arising. For example, around 2004 or 2005, we did some bets in the Green Cape market, amongst other markets that started to make part of the internationalization routine. I found very important the speech of President Nuno when he mentioned the American market for the Brazilian economy, especially for the Ceará state economy. So Brazil as a whole has its main trade partner, China, and Ceará state has the United States as the main trade partner. This North America market represented almost 45% of everything the Ceará state used to sell to international market. With no doubt, it's extremely important economy and market, but this concentration is relevant concentration of our exports to the United States market. In a way, it's concerning because when I see all the efforts that have been done in this recent past, and this effort made for openings, for commercial openings, to foster this bilateral relationship between Ceará and Portugal, more than ever, I realize that we must be together, closer, more united, because we have an environment that we cannot let this environment to disappear. We are aware of this different situation because of this pandemic, and we know that we have great opportunities in this bilateral relationship with Portugal market. Just quickly comparing amongst those countries that participate in the European Union, Portugal represents around, it's the 10th or 12th destination when this analysis goes toward the exports from Ceará to countries of the European Union. So we have all the conditions to go further. We know the market. We have this institutional this environment that is favorable. We've had some initiatives, highlight initiatives in 2019. We did a huge work with the food sector. We trailed this pathway in different stages, and we visited, first of all, a fair in the Portugal market, a food sector fair. After this mission, we've redesigned lots of products, for example, the manioc starch, so the fruits, in frozen fruits, and the cheese muffin, and we did an exhibition of these products in huge supermarkets in Portugal, in Oporto and Lisbon. And after all this promotion work, we finally started to export the small and medium enterprises companies within the state of Ceará to this market. And obviously our understanding is that this foreign trade is a highway with two sides. So we look to import with great concern. We want to import so Portuguese-originated goods. And since we have great institutions, great entities here towards the international trade, we need to keep up the good work, keep up fostering these enterprises, because I'm sure that 2021 will be a better year, mainly for these the opportunities between these two markets. Mr. Abreu, I will ask a question to you and Colonel Romero, and I think we are highlighting this foreign investment between Brazil and Portugal. So we're talking about foreign commerce when we'll talk about Europe and Mercosur, but yet on the investment matter, I'll ask Abreu, since you have almost 30 years of Brazil performing the energy sector. That is a sector where Portugal has important knowledge to share with the world. In your assessment, what is the role of the language? So in parallel, the aerial sector, but with TAP, what is the role of the language, how the language made possible, or this matter, the subject, investment subject? Well, Rômulo, I think the language is a fundamental factor. It's a main factor, whether in commerce, whether in the foreign investments. Karina told here that talked about the flight company TAP, and you, Rômulo, told about TAP. So it's been fundamental, because the boats, they transport goods, the planes, they transport tourists and investors. And it's been fundamental. I think the language, obviously, whether Portuguese or Brazilian entrepreneur or any entrepreneur in the world, if we think to internationalize or to expand my business, language is a critical factor, and mostly because we know that a major part of the SMEs, mostly the issue of talking a second language, I think I am almost Brazilian. I'm here for 25 years. And many times, especially within the SMEs, we have some difficulties in general to a Brazilian to speak a second language. It's a reality, it's a fact. We cannot neglect it. And obviously, when we talk about internationalization, the language is a fundamental factor. I have no doubt that Portugal is a door of entrance to commerce and to investment, and as Luis Cacho told us, using the port of Sines, not only that is more common to the maritime business. Regarding the state of Ceará, when Ceará thinking about Sines, maybe it's the most straightforward line between Ceará and Portugal. And for the agribusiness, this maritime time of travel is very important. And to use the port of Sines as a hub, as a maritime hub, since, as you know, the railway and the roadway connection with Sines to Europe, for example, it's not so easy, but to use the port of Sines as a maritime hub for the distribution of goods, it's important. And I have no doubt that in this field, language is fundamental. It's easier for a Brazilian entrepreneur to do business in Portugal because we share the same language than to start a business relationship in another country in Europe. And I highlight here the importance of the Commonwealth Portuguese language countries. So to go to Angola, for example, from Portugal, it's relatively close, and we know that we have a strong relationship with Brazil and Angola, and this connection may be stronger. So talking about business, so language is still a critical factor, and if I must choose between a country that speaks a language that I don't speak, or a country with a language that I dominate, although I will choose the second one. Because of this, I think language is still a critical factor for companies' internationalization amongst the Portuguese language countries. So, Colonel, in the sector of tourism, do you believe the Portuguese bet done in Brazil, in tourism in Brazil, so the language is still important? How do you assess the opportunities in the touristic sector for both sides? I would like to comment initially about this international trade, so that beyond incentives for import-export, our Ceará's chamber is occupied trying to identify opportunities of investments, of import and export, but also services. Nowadays, we are more business chamber, so identifying opportunities of investments than a chamber of for import, for goods, import and export. So the import and export of services is growing a lot, has been growing a lot. I recently worked with a Portuguese civil construction company interested in to reform a port in the state of Bahia. Is a very important Portuguese company. So Portuguese are coming to provide service in Brazil. In the investment area, I've been following the Portuguese investments in the field of tourism, and as our our friend Ivens Dias Branco used to say, Portuguese, they understand about tourism, let them work. And then we deliver them a huge investment in partnership with a local entrepreneur, where the Portuguese started their expertise with a golf field, with a hotel, so a brand new touristic equipment. So investments in tourism are yet a fertile area. We need to work on this with the expertise of Portuguese companies in tourism. So just reiterating, our chamber is working a lot to identify opportunities in business, and we also believe in partnerships, and we've been trying to partner up with the Portuguese regional associations. Some associations in Portugal are searching us, are asking us to identify investors in Brazil. And recently we've been contacted by an association from Alentejo, from Portugal area, with cattle stock and agribusiness project that asked us to identify possible investors. So we did a business mission. So entrepreneurs from here, they went to Portugal to assess the opportunity, and vice versa. So Rômulo, I agree with you that, and talking about tourism, we've had successful investments, and it's yet a very fertile field for investments. Karina, please, let me ask you about foreign trade linked to European Union and Mercosur. And the last talks, the last interventions, people talked about the importance of the language, importance of the aerial connection. So Portuguese and Brazil are more connected, but apparently are more connected in the foreign investment than the foreign trade. So basically, Brazil exports oil, fuel oil to Portugal, and Portugal exports edible oils from Portugal to Brazil. So there's a high concentration because of the market itself. Do you think, Karina, that agreement between European Union and Mercosur that will impact on the fees and the taxes and on the sanitary regulations can make Portugal an important hub to Brazil and to link Brazil and Europe? We can see a new perspective. So yes, from my point of view, the conclusion of the negotiations about this agreement between Mercosur and European Union, and I highlight this is the first bilateral, bi-regional agreement of history that has institutional, political, and economic impacts that's a fact. But what I highlight is, in order to we have the proper assessment conditions on the impact and on the importance in the medium, so it must be in the medium and the long term. But the agreement anticipates some benefits. It represents, in a broader dimension, the first effective sign that the country is going towards an economic opening. It's very important. We are following closely the international trades, and we're talking about an agreement that arrives almost 30 years of the Assumption Treaty that was 30 years after the creation of the Mercosur. And our challenge is what to expect in the short term. I'm talking about it, about this detail, because I am a Master of Science student, and one of my first studies were related to this agreement. And when I studied this agreement, with this agreement, it will not be possible to measure the impact in the next 24 months. So I did a step back and I re-adequate my Master of Science thesis theme because we don't have how to measure. So we've had the BRICS and other bilateral agreements signed. We know that the discourse about economic opening is not an instant thing. We need to have it in a progressive basis and responsible, exactly to help the companies, mostly the SMEs, to restructure. We're talking again about a year where when the SMEs are finishing their 2020 in a very weak situation, they will need support. So the economic openings or the trade opening that we are seeing, all the economic teams from the central government, so it will demand some important adequations that from our national companies. That's why it's important to happen in a gradual way with minute criteria. And our objective is, when talking about an agreement, as this agreement between Mercosur and the European Union, is that this come to strengthening the competitiveness of national industry. So let's take into account that Brazil and other countries with other countries from Mercosur, so 20 years ago started this liberal commercial cycle, but we know that we have other factors and other concerns in order to proceed with this new cycle, as well as concrete propositions that asks us for a more special, more care. And we believe in the conclusion of these negotiations, and it will be a step, a responsible and important step for the trade relations between these two communities. Okay, Karina, I'll ask the other side of the Atlantic. Let me ask you, Professor Luis Cacho, we're talking about Mercosur and European Union, talking about a market of almost 800, 900 million people put together, divided by the Atlantic Ocean. And so when we link them, we have a space of a populational density that surpass South America and Europe alone, and also including Africa also. And we have a very important Portuguese language Africa in the middle. And so it's more than 1 billion people affected by this common Atlantic space. And so what's the perception of the Atlantic space from your point of view of the businesses in this Atlantic space, and how Portugal may establish its position as the best choice for Brazil to be a hub, to be a commerce hub? So, Rômulo, I've been listening to Karina, and in fact, she has a lot of information about these agreements between European Union and Mercosur. And what we can say in this moment is that Portugal will be in the... One of the things that is in the Portuguese agenda is to establish definitely this agreement in this agreement, Mercosur and European Union, that is delaying a lot, being postponed a lot. So Portugal as a hub to the trade, to enter in Europe, and also North Africa and the Mediterranean Sea, Mediterranean region. We've identified lots of markets. We've been working in this segment, and we identified, in fact, that agribusiness subjects, agribusiness matters. So the meat or soybean and maize, whether in these cultures or that is not very expressive in the European market. In fact, it must be consolidated. And looking to the dynamics that could originate, we thought that we in the port of Sines, we may have received the best ships in the world. There are no other ports in this region where this is possible. This is a very economic advantage for the product. So we have other Brazilian industries that may improve the value here and help develop the region of Sines. And just to appreciate a little further, so agribusiness is the sector today that makes Brazil, with the soybean and maize, a great competitor with the United States, to be a production center from north to south. But the entrance in Europe is from Hamburg, and the port of Hamburg is not as big, has not the same capacity of the port of Sines. So in the south of Europe, where we can have some transformation of these products, so the consumption has been increasing of the agribusiness products in Brazil. So in general, the soybean and maize and other products, fruits, for example. I'm not focusing in any goods, in any specific good, but we have a logistic course. What is done here in Europe could be optimized, and what we believe is that we have optimization opportunities to all these goods to be processed at Sines and then distributed to other parts of Europe. Just to confirm an information, so nowadays when we look to our exports to Portugal, so we have 11% of soybeans and 7.8% maize. So the soybean and maize, they are communitary destination. So bottom line, soybean, and these numbers we have today of Brazilian exports to Portugal, these 11% that Portugal imports of soy is to the Portuguese market or to Europe? So it's to Portuguese market, so linked to animal feed. And also we have some Portuguese companies that put the company in other markets. And, so with the soybeans, we have the soybeans as a fantastic protein that is commonly imported and produced in this market with an exponential growth and will keep growing. But on the other hand, in the other sense, this region is in the Alentejo region, and Alentejo they have a very big potential to agribusiness. So the wine, the olive oil and fruits, And also because many Portuguese in Brazil are linked to this sector. So this connection is two-way connection. We have a group of synergies and opportunities, and this proximity between us, it makes a difference. So if it's performed in a very integral way, it will create more value for everyone. If we have a strategic region from the state of Ceará or from the Alentejo government, so to develop mechanisms, important mechanisms and incentives, we have a group of very important tools. And also the Brazilian companies nowadays, they can have access a group of incentives from the Portuguese government and also from the European government. Between commas, and it can leverage and structure all these products and to create value for both economies. For sure. So we are commenting here about the last 20 years and putting the questions of the European Union Mercosur agreement, if this agreement advances, and we want the Portuguese government to help this context, if we'll have a new perspective in foreign trade. So in this, if Portugal can benefit as a hub, as an intermediary, how do you see the potentials of the repercussions in Portugal of this from this agreement? So Rômulo, I had some internet issues and I lost some speeches here, and I would like to stay here to pass a message talking about the importance of the Portuguese language. I would talk about the biggest network of contact
que temos na língua portuguesa aqui no Brasil é sem dúvida esta interligação das 18 câmaras, mas eu não queria deixar de falar que nós pertencemos a uma rede maior, uma rede mundial de língua portuguesa, que é a rede das câmaras
belong to the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce in the whole world. We have dozens of chambers around the world doing business in Portuguese. I don't see other countries with these dynamics and with a dynamic that is being strongly supported by the Portuguese government and thus and the Portuguese government on his side is getting benefits from this support. So we from Brazil, we can do business all over the world in Portuguese. I think this is a great differential. And talking about the agreement, the Mercosur and the European Union agreement, and
esse foi também tema da vinda dele aqui no
Brasil. Theme in our event we've had some days ago, and for the opportunities for the agribusiness, and where effectively Portugal will keep committed to do business straight to Brazil, to lower, to have lower taxes, decrease the number of fees and the value of fees. And after the leadership of German and some news we're receiving, I think that we have reunited all the goodwills of the Brazilian government and the Portuguese government to try to close a very important and concrete agreement. We'll try to close this agreement that is a priority to us. If we have some hinders from any side, I think Portugal will try to advance and some concrete point in favor of Brazil. So if Brazil does not close all the items of agreement, I think this part of agribusiness is relevant. I think Portugal sends 42% of edible oils, olive oils, 10% is wine, 9-10% are the codfish and fishes and seafood. So we have a transforming industry in Portugal, have a very modern industry, and we send to Brazil a lot of machines for the automotive industry or automotive car parts. So this is an important part of the export from Portugal to Brazil. And I was talking here in a breakfast with Portuguese entrepreneurs. It's been suggested a specific mission in 2021 since Portugal has a capacity in this injected plastic, and moldings is one of the main exporting industries in Portugal, in partnership with the main assemblers, car assemblers. So there is no reason to take advantage of the cluster, the Portuguese cluster, to generate development in Brazil. So it will be one of the greatest grabs that the government will try to explore, and we'll try to invest in this relationship. As we know, in Brazil, with the currency exchange devaluation, so Brazil will try to invest, keep investing, and the Portuguese industries, they may be certified partners to develop the business in Brazil. So my final remarks are, will be here. The role of the Chambers of Commerce is to foster and to give support to the entrepreneurs. So the Secretary of State told me that we'll have another mission next year to this industrial area, this car parts and the transform and the other transformation industry sectors, and we'll try to advocate in Brazil to give the support to investors from Portugal to come to Brazil in better conditions and to take advantage of the moment to the flow of goods from Brazil to Portugal. So we have two fundamental roles. One of them is to support the CC trade, try to make the commodities from Brazil to arrive at the port of Sines, and from the port of Sines they may be distributed to south of France and to Iberic Peninsula, whether in soybeans or maize or mining or oil. So, and broaden of these products are nowadays to Portugal and then to Madrid, and from Madrid and to the north of Europe. So we have the role to be an intermediary of this CC trade. So Luis told us about the thermoelectric using coal that will be deactivated, and then we'll have the opportunity in Brazil that will bring the great logistic operators in this area to create a hub at Sines, port of Sines, and this exit from the north of Brazil has a fundamental role. We have all this logistic part of the flow of goods on the agribusiness and steel and mineral goods, ore, and so this raw matter arrives to port of Sines and may be dispatched to north of Europe and all the Mediterranean area. And so CC business is a priority, and the government of Portugal tried to show to the Minister of Agriculture in Brazil And so that's the advocation, that's our advocate work with the federal government in Brazil. Okay, Nuno, thank you. We are going towards our final moments of our debate. I would like to ask Colonel Romero a last question. So, in this sense, told us that Nuno and Luis told us to have the Port of Sines, one of the ports with the high, deep, profound waters, and in Brazil. So do you believe that Ceará, with our port, so sometimes the last point in Brazil of lots of goods, and then the Port of Sines, can we see from Ceará an evolution of our international trade? Well, I understand that Ceará has the ideal conditions to be a hub in the northeastern region of Brazil, northeastern Brazil. As Sines attends Spain and south of France, and we are a door of entrance. We have an offshore port here, the same port, and we have some homework to do. We need to have customs facilities in the port of Pecém. These customs facilities will facilitate a lot the use of the port to import, export. And so I see two important points of arrival and departure. So Pecém and Sines. Sines for the Iberic Peninsula and Ceará for the northeastern Brazil. And I would ask Luis Cacho, what's the percentage of products that passes through Port of Sines that are just that have no final destination in Portugal? This is significant or not? Well, the cargo, the container cargo, we have 80% of what arrives at Sines goes to other markets. So just 80% of the container cargo and the 20% of other cargo are for final destination at Portugal and Spain. So I cannot differentiate a lot because Spain is almost in domestic market for us. We are an Iberic port in terms of operations of containered cargo. So 80% of containered cargo, and the 20% is not too much significant, and that's why I refer to a new strategic approach for the Brazilian agribusiness, a new approach. And I understand with focusing on the European market, that's the message I passed to Minister Teresa from the Brazilian Agriculture Ministry, and she showed a high interest to common development. So I think we have some eyes from the agribusiness in Brazil for this new strategic approach to the agribusiness logistics. So we believe that we have in fact this opportunity, and for this, so we have 80% of container cargo. It may happen to the other markets. For other cargoes, it's obvious we may perform it. So we think that we have cross pathways here on the global level. So we do this strategic approach to have, with this approach, to create more value to our business development. So I believe, just complementing, I believe in this investment and know-how trade. I can maybe reach people, investors from Ceará, to produce shrimp and the region of Alentejo. And also I can see the Portuguese entrepreneur producing wine in Brazil, and they already do this. So this trade and this exchange of know-how to avoid the logistic flow. So to make my shrimp to arrive in France, I must dispatch my goods through a ship. And if I put my shrimp being produced in Portugal, so it's another approach. So it's a know-how being placed to address logistic problems. If I have nowadays a great distance and I can, through business implementation, so endeavors to make these distances shorter, so these are logistic solutions. So in other words, instead of bringing the Portuguese wine, I may have the Portuguese entrepreneur producing Portuguese wine in Brazil. So we have logistics problems since the world, since the beginning of our history. And I think logistics problem solving may not pass through transportation solutions, but solutions that make the distances short. If I can produce some shrimp in Alentejo, so it's much less far from our consumer market. So it's just a note, and I think this is a trend, and Luis Cacho told this, in other words, so this interaction with agribusiness in the bilateral relationship. I think Alentejo region is very adept to it, and also Ceará has lots of areas. So I can't say olive trees, but we have other species to cultivate. So we arrived at the end of our meeting. I would like to thank you for your participation. This digital format allows us to have, for example, the opportunity to listen to us in the next year. In the next Expolog, we can listen to us to this panel today, and let's make a comparison of advancements. I would like to thank the participation of Eurico Brilhante Dias, Secretary of State, Internationalization Secretary of Portugal, that showed us the economic issues and debating. We had Armando Abreu, the President of the Portuguese Chambers in Brazil, Karina Frota, Vice-President of International Business Center at FIEC, and Luis Carlos is the President of CINE in Algarve and the Port Association of Portugal, and also APELOP, the port of the Portuguese language ports, and Nuno Ribeiro de Souza, President of the Chamber of Commerce of the Brazil, Portugal, in São Paulo, and Romero Souza, President of the Chamber of Commerce of Portugal in Ceará. And may we have the opportunity to be in 2021 together. Thank you all. Happy to see you safe and sound. So cheers. Congratulations and cheers.
Obrigada mais uma vez pela participação.
Thank you again for your partnership.